And that's why we wanted Lila to come and speak today. The second thing that jumped out to me was that I had never heard anyone articulate the answers to the hard questions about abortion as Lila had, with love, with compassion, and with such precision and truth. And I know that's the attitude she has whenever she addresses a crowd. This is a very delicate issue, and we understand that. Many of us are uncomfortable right now because when we hear the word abortion, it elicits a lot of intense emotions, and we understand that, and we want to be sensitive to that. It elicits these emotions because we're talking about the things that matter most in life. And that's why it gets us right in our heart. But we need to have the conversation. At JSerra, we believe all of you are sons and daughters of God made in His image, and that you have a dignity that deserves to be respected and protected. And that dignity began when you were in your mother's womb. And for that reason, we're asking Lila to bring that same compassion and mercy and precision to talk to us about this most important debate that's going on in our culture. So will you please give a warm JSerra welcome to Lila Rose.
Thank you, Patrick. It's awesome to be here with all of you. I came in this morning from downtown LA. My husband and I just moved here about 7 months ago. We're from the Bay Area. Anybody from the Bay Area originally? Are you? A few? Okay, nice. We're here, represent. And I did go to UCLA, as Patrick said. I highly recommend it, by the way. I had a really awesome experience there. So I'm not sure if any seniors are here, or juniors, and you're thinking about college and next steps, but down on the USC, up on the UCLA. But if you go to USC, I still love and respect you. But anyways, I'm really excited to talk to you this morning. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, JSerra, for having me. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Susie, all the teachers, the faculty, administration, and all of you. What I'm going to be talking to you about are a few things. First of all, a little bit about how I got involved in the pro-life movement, my backstory, human rights, why human rights are so important and why they are more important than ever today in the fight for human rights in the United States today, the science around the abortion topic, controversy, what abortion is, some common objections and reasons or questions that people have to think that they may support abortion, so to tackle some of those, and then close with what our response can be. I imagine that many of us here are Catholic, but many of us might not be. We might have different backgrounds, different families of origin, different faiths. There's a lot of diversity, I imagine, in the room. I was actually not raised Catholic. I was raised kind of evangelical Christian. I actually became Catholic in college, so that's a part of my story. But even before I became Catholic, I was extremely passionate about pro-life. I'm now married. I just got married 1 year ago to the love of my life. Marriage is awesome, by the way. I highly recommend it. And because I was a good Catholic girl after I became Catholic in college, I did what good Catholic girls do. We pray for a future husband, and I was praying to St. Joseph because they have these novenas to St. Joseph for a future husband. So I would pray to St. Joseph saying, find me a good future husband, and I end up marrying a guy named Joseph. So, it worked out, and we're due our baby. This is our first baby. It's a little boy, and I'm actually 7.5 months pregnant, and he's due on Christmas Eve. So it's like Jesus. So I'm not Mary, but I really like Mary. I'm a big fan. So I told my husband, we should dress up as Joseph and Mary for Halloween. He was like, maybe we should be zombies. I was like, so I'm still working on that. Amazon.com has great Halloween costumes for cheap, so I'm going to try to convince him. But anyways, I got involved in the pro-life movement when I was a teenager. So I was actually 15 years old when I started Live Action. And Live Action has now become the largest online presence for the pro-life movement. So we have almost 4 million people following us online. We educate millions of people every week with facts, with truth, with science about human life in the womb and about what abortion actually is. And we are there to provide options and another path because we firmly believe that every single human life has value and that life is always worth fighting for. And before I go further, I want to say one important thing.
I have a very dear friend who, when she was in high school, she actually had 2 abortions. And this is something that is extremely painful for some of us, maybe even this room. It might be painful for someone in your family or friends that you have. And after those abortions, she actually was going through her own story and journey. She was an immigrant. She had had a really difficult childhood in many ways. Her parents got divorced. And she ended up finding Christ later on and just having this whole transformation in her life and finding deep healing for the wounds that were left by her abortions. And now she's married to the love of her life. She has kids of her own after those first 2 deaths of those first 2 children, but her life has totally changed. But I wanted to share her story because this is not, and my talk this morning is not to shame anyone or to bring more pain or to bring guilt, but it's to bring truth and ultimately healing and freedom and love. Because that's what God wants for all of us. That's one of the reasons I became Catholic, because I realized increasingly the love of Christ and the love that he has for each of us and how he designed us and created us for freedom and for eternal joy and eternal bliss and eternal peace. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I wanted to share that first because if you know someone, or maybe you may know someone in the future, when you're in college, you might know somebody who's been hurt by an abortion, who's had an abortion, been involved with abortion. There are resources for healing and help and freedom. And if you know somebody who is considering abortion or who might find themselves considering, there are also resources and options, confidential free support for those people. So that's so important for me to say first, because this is an issue that is not just some political battle or some cultural debate, but it is something that affects so many people personally. Who here believes in human rights? Raise your hand if you think human rights are important. I'm just gonna hope we all raise our hands. There's a few people like not raising their hand, but I'm gonna assume you believe in human rights. The United Nations has a preamble in their Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Everyone know about the United Nations, right? Love them or hate them, all nations across the world coming together, and they have this Universal Declaration on Human Rights. And they say that the recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. So they're saying we have to recognize the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of the human family, of all members of the human family, in order to secure freedom, justice, and peace. So they make this very huge pronouncement about all members of the human family. So my next question for you is, who are all the members of the human family? Who qualifies as a member of the human family? Well, one of the first qualifications to be a member of the human family is you have to be part of the human species. And that means you have to have 2 human parents. Your parents have to both be human. And what I'm going to share with you next is really the science, the reason when I became pro-life that was really foundational for me about why I even took on this cause when I was a teenager. Because I took on this cause as I was a teenager because I came to see this as the greatest human rights cause of our day. And listen, I know that there are a lot of causes out there. I know that there are a lot of issues out there. I know that there are a lot of things to care about out there, and I agree with a lot of the things we have to fight for. But if we do not protect human life when they are the most vulnerable and the most innocent and the most weak, if our laws do not do that, if our culture does not do that, then we will have injustice and we will have a lack of peace at the core of our society. Life has to come first. It's why our Declaration of Independence talks about how we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's what our founding fathers penned. Well, they said life first. Life and then liberty and then the pursuit of happiness. If you don't have life, you can't enjoy any other human rights. You can't enjoy any other rights, period, because you're dead. And the purpose of laws, the reason we have laws in this society, whether it's laws against murder or laws against rape or laws against theft or laws against any kind of serious deceit or things that are going on in the business world or whatever, we have laws to ensure that those who are really strong can't just beat up on the weak just because they happen to be strong, to create law and order, to create a sense of order in our society. So what happens in our society when the law is turned against the weakest member of society, when the law is actually turned against the most vulnerable human being in society? And today, there is no more vulnerable human being than a human being who has no voice, who has no autonomy, no ability to go out and march out and protect him or herself, who is totally dependent on his or her mother or another human being. A few facts that I think are important to share. I'm going to show you a quick video in a moment about the humanity of life in the womb, because it is very clear when human life begins. You open a science textbook, it's not a religious question, it's a science question. It's very clear when human life first begins. It begins at a moment of fertilization. You get a unique individual human life. You have complete genetic code. It's a single cell embryo. All he or she, the sex is determined, even eye color is determined, future height is determined in that moment. And it just needs, that single cell embryo just needs time and nourishment to grow bigger, to grow ultimately into, now I'm 20 or 30 weeks pregnant, to grow into a 30-week fetus, to grow into one day an infant, to grow into a toddler, to grow into one day a teenager, to grow into an adult. And Peter Singer is a pro-choice. Has anyone heard of Peter Singer? A few of us, okay. You're in on the worlds of ethicists. He calls himself an ethicist, somebody who is a philosopher who knows about ethics. He's actually in support of infanticide. So this guy actually he's a professor at Princeton University. He's very famous. And he actually thinks that in the first 3 months after birth, a baby shouldn't have any legal rights. That's how extreme he takes his position. But he also understands and he acknowledges when human life begins. And he says that there is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is in fact a human being. And I want to read this again, because this is a guy who's definitely pro-choice, he's even pro-infanticide, and he's acknowledging what all the scientific research tells us, what it proves to us. He says again, there is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and human eggs. So sperm and eggs on its own is not a human being. They're components that could create a human being. An embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is in fact a human being. And some of the amazing statistics that just struck me, I remember reading about this as a teen and being so moved that just at 21 days after fertilization, a baby's heart starts beating. When I was 7 weeks pregnant, I saw the flicker and I heard the heartbeat of my child. And I didn't know at the time that it was a him, his little heart beating. It's amazing how quickly, even before women know they're pregnant, often before they've even missed their period, that little heart may start to beat just 21 days after fertilization. Sometimes women don't know they're pregnant until 6, 7, or 8 weeks after their last menstrual period. Brain waves by just 6 weeks and 2 days after the moment of conception. At 8 to 10 weeks, the embryo actually has begun to move. At 8 weeks and 2 days, the baby can be squinting, can make grasping motions, can do toe pointing. I want to show a quick video that's really powerful. If anybody has Instagram here, I'm going to guess where most of us are on Instagram. Live Action has an amazing Instagram. And this is a video that we posted recently in 60 seconds showing the development of life in the womb. So we can play that video now. Thank you. Let's see, how's it going? Almost ready to be born, Christmas Eve. Can't wait. It's very powerful to see that. That's how we all began our life, which is really crazy to think about, that all of us looked like that at some point in our human development. But going back to the United Nations and human rights, they're saying that all members of the human family have these rights. And I think that for us to deny one set of members because of their age, because of their race, because of their ethnicity, because of their religion, because of where they live, what country they live in, nothing should disqualify. Nothing should disqualify any member of the human family from having their human rights protected. When I first found out about abortion, again, I was young. I was actually 9 or 10 years old. I remember finding this book in my parents' house. So my parents were not pro-life activists or anything like that, but they were pro-life. I mean, they were in support of life. And I found this book in my parents' living room called A Handbook on Abortion. And it had this kind of serious-looking woman on the cover. It was kind of this old-fashioned book, it looked to me. And I was really curious. I had heard the word abortion before. I mean, a lot of kids, when they hear about it, they're interested, they're kind of curious. And the book fell open to the center where it had been creased in the middle. So there were all of these pictures. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this image. And I remember just being shocked and closing the book and pushing it away, and then drawing up a little bit more of that kind of 9-year-old curiosity. I pull the book back, I open it up, and I look again. And what I was looking at for the first time was the image of a child in the first trimester. So that means the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, maybe 10 weeks old. A child with newly formed little legs, arms, a tiny newly formed little face, who had been the victim of a powerful first trimester suction or D&C abortion. And that deeply struck me because I saw there were no talking points or kind of political arguments in my mind. I mean, later on, my body, my choice, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. There was just this image of this is a life. I knew you could see the humanity of this life that had been torn apart. And a suction abortion is the most powerful, it's the most popular abortion today. It's the one that's committed the most in California and throughout our country. There's almost 3,000 abortions every single day in our country. Many of them are these suction abortions. Since abortion became legal across our nation in 1973, when these 7 men on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, out of the 9 justices, 7 men in black robes decided for the entire country that somehow abortion was good for us, and it was going to empower us as women, and so they made it legal throughout the entire nation. And now, even in the state of California, you can have an abortion virtually through all 9 months. Planned Parenthood in Los Angeles, my team was just on the phone with them. We're always testing and finding out what's happening in these abortion clinics. They do abortions through 6 months. Babies can survive outside the womb after 6 months in the NICU with special care for medical professionals. And they were quick to refer us. We said, well, do you do abortions later? And they said, we'll refer you to these special partners we have if you want to do the abortion later, no problem. And we can get the state of California, Medi-Cal, to pay for this abortion, basically no questions asked. Since 1973, this has somehow been considered, these acts of violence against our children have been considered somehow empowerment. But I know, talking to the hundreds of women I've had the privilege to talk to over the last 10, 15 years, that no woman is walking into an abortion clinic feeling powerful. She's not walking into an abortion clinic like, woohoo, I'm gonna get my abortion today. Women and girls, we walk into an abortion clinic because we actually are feeling powerless. We're feeling alone. We're feeling that this is our only option, that we can't get on with the dream we might have, the education we want, the career, maybe the relationship, maybe the guy in our life is saying, yeah, you gotta have an abortion, duh, like what else is there for you? That's not a position of power. We've been sold this incredible lie. My generation, millennials, Generation Z, we've all been sold this incredible lie that somehow to take a life, an act of violence, is empowerment. But it does anything but. It hurts. It destroys a new life, a child that deserves love. And it hurts us too. It wounds us too. And that's why I've been working in this cause for the last 15 years, because I see that we cannot have human rights in this country if we don't protect life, and we can't have peace spiritually or culturally in our homes, in our communities, in our schools if we see life as a threat, as an enemy for us to fight and attack. instead of as a gift and a blessing that we have to fight for, that we should link arms together to support each other and fight for. I believe our culture can only have justice and peace if we have a zero tolerance policy on violence against the weak and the innocent. A zero tolerance policy for acts of violence and aggression, especially lethal violence, which is what abortion is, lethal violence against a child in the womb. We need to have that zero tolerance policy. And we need to actually come up with solutions to the challenges that women and girls and families face, instead of resorting to violence to solve problems. I mentioned I was going to respond to some objections because we can hear all of this, and then there's that voice in the back like, well, what about this case, right? What about this really tough case? In that case, maybe we should consider abortion. I want to respond to 3 of them, and I will be answering questions at the end of this talk, so if you have others, I'd love to respond. But the 3 that I want to tackle today are rape and incest, abortion being medically necessary, and then the question of poverty, or people who are very low income. Has anyone heard these as common objections to why abortion should be okay? Okay, I think we've all probably heard this. We weren't born yesterday. Well, this idea that we need abortion because of rape and incest, right? You probably have heard this. First of all, it's important to note that less than 1% of all abortions today, I mentioned there's almost 1 million abortions in this country every year. Less than 1% are because of rape, incest, or health issues with the mother. So it's a tiny fraction of most of the abortions today are because I don't feel like I can do this, I don't feel like I'm in the position I'm in school, or I have other kids, whatever it is, but less than 1% is for this reason. But even in those cases, is it okay? Is it acceptable? I think about Rebecca Kiesling. Rebecca Kiesling is a friend of mine, a lawyer now, she has 4 children, but she was conceived in a brutal rape against her mother. And this was the year before Roe v. Wade, and her mother actually wanted an abortion, but she didn't get one. She wasn't able to find an abortionist in time, and she didn't end up having an abortion. And Rebecca instead was born and placed for adoption. And her father was a rapist. And she says, did I deserve the death penalty for the crimes of my father? Rape is a horrific, and sex abuse, horrific violences against a woman, and that perpetrator, they deserve to be held fully accountable. But in this country, we don't even give the death penalty to rapists. It's actually against federal law to give the death penalty to rapists. So why would we give that penalty to the child that had nothing to do with the violence? And do we think that abortion is going to heal or take away the trauma of rape? The reality is when you actually talk to rape survivors, and we interview them all the time at Live Action and with Live Action News, they tell us their stories about how actually abortion was not healing for them. Abortion is a second act of violence against their body as it is against that child's body. And abortion doesn't unrape her. It doesn't take away the memory of the rape. It doesn't take away the trauma. It just compounds the trauma. There was a study called the Reardon study that was done on rape survivors who got pregnant. And it found that 93% of rape victims who aborted their child after getting pregnant after rape said that they would not recommend abortion to other rape victims in the future. That they were actually sad in the end that they had that abortion, that it actually compounded the pain that they felt. And we interview women who had experiences of abuse, even incest, horrific situations, who did choose life. And they share how, despite the pain and the trauma that they endured, that became an opportunity for healing. Whether they placed for adoption or some of them even chose to parent, that became an opportunity for them for healing, to see good brought out of something so dark. So that is a common objection we hear, and the answer is abortion is not the solution. Abortion, lethal violence against the vulnerable, is never the solution to our problems. It never does good. It never elevates us. The other common objection I often hear is abortion is necessary because a woman will die. Who has heard this one? A bunch of us have. I hear it all the time. And in fact, on Twitter, I don't know if anyone here is on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot, and there's all these activists, and many of them are actually abortionists who we tweet back and forth, and they say, you want women to die. And I'm like, trust me, I'm a woman. I know that I do not want women to die, and I don't think abortion is healthy for women. And let's unpack that a little bit. There are 1,000 medical professionals through the Dublin Declaration, which is this announcement that these over 1,000 medical professionals made together, many of them OBGYNs, and they together say, as experienced practitioners and researchers in obstetrics and gynecology, so OBGYN serving women's health care, babies, etc., we affirm that direct abortion, the purposeful destruction of an unborn child, is never medically necessary to save the life of a woman. We uphold that there is a fundamental difference between abortion and the necessary medical treatments that are carried out to save the life of the mother, even if such treatments result in the loss of her unborn child. We confirm that prohibiting abortion does not affect in any way the availability of optimal care to pregnant women. Now, this might sound really surprising to some of you. These doctors are basically saying abortion's not a medical treatment, and you can find ways to care for high-risk pregnancies without killing the baby. Maybe there's a situation where you have to deliver the baby early. Maybe there's a situation if the woman has cancer where you do chemotherapy, and that actually has a negative impact on the baby's life. It could actually lead to the baby's death. But those are not abortion treatments. The goals there are not to kill the baby. The goal of an abortion legally is to have a dead baby at the end of the day. But the goal of healthcare is to try to save both lives. And if that child's life tragically dies because the treatment has an adverse effect on that baby, that's not an abortion, that's a tragedy. We need to change the way we look at women's healthcare in this country. Instead of looking at it as us versus them, baby versus mom, look at it in terms of love them both. Care for them both. The Hippocratic Oath, which medical students are supposed to take, one of the elements of that oath, which is what doctors have been taking for thousands of years, is do no harm. Doctors do no harm. Their job is to heal, not to hurt. Their job is to heal, not to take life. The last one I want to mention is poverty. Who here has heard, well, we need abortion because of low-income families, or they're going to grow up in poverty, the foster care system's really bad? We've all heard this. Okay, I have friends who grew up in foster care. I don't know if any of you here do, or maybe you have even experiences with yourself, but to look someone in the eyes who is grown up in poverty, or who has grown up in the foster care system, and to say, basically, maybe it would be better you weren't born, because that's really what we're saying. When we say if you're a low-income mother, or if you're a mother who's placing for adoption, or if you're a baby that might grow up in poverty, so therefore you should be aborted, you shouldn't even exist. You're not just saying that to that baby in the womb. You're saying that to that 15-year-old, or maybe that 40-year-old who's pushed through and overcome in his or her life, that it would be better you weren't born because of the poverty, because of the foster care, because of what you suffered. Suffering is all over our country, it's all over Orange County, it's all over Los Angeles. It's a part of our life, but we should make suffering better for people. We should make suffering people better and help suffering people instead of saying you shouldn't exist. Instead of saying it's better that you don't exist. And that's what I want to close with here. The heart of the entire pro-life movement, the heart of the entire, you say, anti-abortion message, is really that life is worth it. That life is worth fighting for. That it doesn't matter how you were conceived. It doesn't matter how you got pregnant. It doesn't matter the challenges that you may be facing. Your life is precious. Your life is worth fighting for. For those people of faith in the room, it's because we know that we're made in God's image and likeness. We know that we're actually made in the image of God himself, that when Christ came down and took on human flesh, he was incarnate in the womb of the Virgin Mary. He became man. He was doing something radical. He was saying and he was claiming humanity as sacred, all humanity as sacred. Christ entered the world as an embryo. And Blessed Virgin Mary said yes. When the angel Gabriel came to her and he said that she would conceive in her womb, he was basically saying, will you give me permission? Will you give the Holy Spirit permission? She said, yes, do unto me according to your will. according to his will. Yes, she said. How powerful her yes is. How powerful our yes is to life, to say yes to the goodness of life. So I want to challenge each one of us here, first of all, to have a no-tolerance policy for lethal violence against the vulnerable, a no-tolerance policy for acts of aggression, for violence against the most vulnerable. Number two, to be committed to supporting and helping as wherever we can, in whatever way we can, whether it's through education, being educated ourselves, supporting women or girls struggling or in crisis, helping in our communities to help elevate life, to help those who are underprivileged, to help those who might need our help. We need to put actions behind what we believe in the way that we talk, in the way that we live, in the way that we love, that we can serve together. I believe if we do these things, if we have no tolerance for the violence, and if we instead focus on elevating and educating and celebrating the good and the beauty of life, we can make abortion a thing of the past. It doesn't have to be our future. It can be our past. And then we can move on to work on all the other important human rights issues out there, because there's plenty of battles to fight. But we have to protect life first. And it has to start with the most vulnerable, with the most weak among us. Mother Teresa is a huge hero of mine, and she would always have very strong things to say about abortion whenever she had the opportunity. She would preach out against it whenever she spoke before United Nations or she spoke before the US the president. She would receive these prizes. But her way, and she worked with the lepers and the lonely. So you know this little nun from Calcutta, India. She was working with those that were poor and those that were dying in the streets of Calcutta, India. But she called abortion the greatest destroyer of peace. She called it the greatest destroyer. It wasn't poverty that was the greatest destroyer of peace. It wasn't the cruel treatment of those that were poor in India that was the greatest destroyer of peace. She called it abortion. She said abortion was the greatest destroyer. And then she challenged us to go out and do something beautiful for God, to go out and to use our lives and to use all the gifts we may have been given, the dreams that we have, in service of others. So let's use her example as we go out to stand up for life and to find ways to use our lives. We're all given a purpose. Every single person in this room has a specific purpose by God to use the gifts, the dreams, the callings that we've each been given to do something beautiful for Him. Thank you guys so much, and excited for questions.
Thank you, Lila, so much for that wonderful presentation and for sharing from your heart and your wisdom. We have taken questions from theology students and we've pooled them together, and we'd ask some of them to come and ask these questions of Lila over the next 15 or 20 minutes, because we know this raises very, very hard questions, and we want to see how Lila addresses those.
Hi. So I was wondering, in today's society where everybody is so polarized over this issue, how would you recommend going about having a peaceful and respectful conversation with strangers or even friends?
Thank you. What's your name?
Mia.
Mia. Thanks, Mia. It's a great question. It is crazy how polarized things have gotten in our country. It's really sad in many ways, but there are real disagreements that we have. I want to first say that I think a lot of the polarization that is out there, it's really blown up by media and social media. There are things that people say to each other online that they would probably never say to each other in real life. And what the pundits are saying on TV, et cetera, and the politicians are saying, they often talk in this extreme language. So I want to first say that actually, according to polling, so the polls that have been done, the vast majority of Americans want significant abortion restrictions. And according to the last Gallup poll, more Americans identify as pro-life than pro-choice. So I think it's first important to realize that you're not alone if you are pro-life. It's actually a lot more people are pro-life than you may even realize. When I was at UCLA, people were like, oh, aren't people so pro-choice there? And I was like, actually, when I would actually talk to students about it and actually have conversations, it's amazing how much we agreed on. It's amazing how much people were willing to come around to see and the truth on abortion. So I just want to encourage you that it is polarizing, but if we are respectful and loving and we share facts, we can find a lot to agree on, and that's what I'm gaming on. And actually that reminds me, I do want to share, I know we have a few more questions, there is a 3-minute video about this very question you asked, because we might think a lot, again, people are just really in support of abortion, that's the way it is. People are changing their minds. We see it every day at Live Action. People change their minds on abortion. It's not like it's set in stone, us versus them, pro-choice versus pro-life. When people get the facts, they do change. And so I do want to share this video that shows a little sample of this in California specifically, as well as throughout the West Coast. So this is a video of Portland, Oregon, Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and how people respond when they get basic facts about abortion. And what you're gonna see is everyday people watching a short 3-minute video called Abortion Procedures by a Former Abortion Doctor. Has anyone seen these? They're medical animations. Okay, these videos have been viewed over 100 million times online. They are medical animations, so they're not gory, they're not these like actual gory pictures, but they actually show you, as if you were a medical student, what happens during each one of the most common abortion procedures. So these students, or these people in LA, Portland, whatever, are learning about this for the first time, and this video is capturing, with their permission of course, their reaction.
What do you think about abortion?
I'm like hella liberal, so it's like obviously I'm pro-abortion.
There are times when you do need abortion, and it's up to that person and their rights and what they want to do.
It's our body, it's our decision, right?
If you're young, it's probably a good thing. If you want to go to college, it's hard with a baby in college.
And would you identify as pro-life, pro-choice, or neither?
Pro-choice, for sure.
Oh my God.
I had no idea this is how abortion takes place, right? Looking at that video and the way it was performed, it's an eye-opener. So no, I don't think any kid, any baby, any infant, any fetus should go through that, no.
I mean, it seems just in general, anytime you have to kill something, it's inhumane.
So are you saying this is a human life?
I mean, it's definitely present, I mean, yeah, I guess like even if you can't afford to, if someone can take care of these babies, I guess like don't abort them,
The videos that you guys showed me has changed my mind. Yes, circumstances, it still makes it hard, but because of the video, I think I kind of have like a better idea.
And I felt bothered by it, kind of like had a little change of mind of being middle of the road to saying maybe I would not be for abortion, no matter what, no matter what the circumstances are.
After especially seeing this video, I realized, no, like abortion is really wrong. Yeah, really, really wrong, wow.
It's scary to see, and I hope I will never have to do that, or I will never do that from my point now.
One word, your thoughts on what you saw?
It's actually really emotional. And I just think, I think that abortion is wrong in all cases. And maybe there should not be any laws with any exceptions.
Would you say that this video changed your mind at all about abortion and your
Absolutely, absolutely. I've never seen it in detail like this.
And who do you think should watch these videos?
I think everybody, I see especially the young girls growing up. I will show this to my daughter, that this is how they abort children.
Before a law is passed, I think they should include videos such as the video that he showed us. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people would change their mind based on it.
There's so many other options apart from abortion, and I know it sucks and like the consequences and how it happened and why you might want an abortion, but there's always another option, and you just got to suck it up because it's a life.
Thanks, Josefina. All right, and these are all on abortionprocedures.com. The videos that those people watch and have been viewed over 100 million times are at abortionprocedures.com, so it's a really powerful tool to use to educate yourself and to educate others. But I think we have time for three or so more questions, so over here.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and a popular question that's asked a lot is, doesn't banning abortion take away a woman's right to decide what she wants to do with her own body? How can that be okay?
Great question. Thank you, Catherine. So what about a woman's right to choose what she wants to do with her body? So first of all, I'm going to say, maybe it's surprising to you, but I believe in a woman's right to mostly do whatever she wants with her body. I mean, I don't think we should be killing ourselves as women or doing that to our body, but I think I have the right to my body. I believe bodily autonomy matters. But, and I should say, when I get pregnant as a woman, there is another body that's now involved. So it's my body, my choice, but when there's another body, it's now another body that's not my body. And this is just science because I'm a woman and there's a male body inside my body, and his body parts are definitely not mine. But I have a responsibility then to that human life, and the people around me also have a responsibility to support me as best they can as well. So I believe in my body and my rights to my body, but I don't have the right to hurt somebody else's body. Our bodily autonomy ends where somebody else's bodily autonomy begins. If somebody in this room just turned to the person next to them and slugged them in the head, they don't have the right, don't do it. I know it's getting, people are tired or it's lunchtime, but you don't have the right to use your body to harm another person's body. So there are limits to our bodily autonomy, and the same goes for a woman who's pregnant. There are limits. I can't do whatever I want to the body inside my body. I have to do my best to care for my own body, and by default, that will care for the baby or the body inside my body. Next question.
Do you consider the morning after pill or Plan B to be like a form of abortion, and like, is it okay for like a pro-life stance?
Great question. What was your name?
Jillian.
Jillian, thanks Jillian. What about morning after pill? What about Plan B? So a lot of people say, oh, it's emergency contraception. They don't consider it to be abortion. The problem is these drugs are not just designed to prevent conception, but they're also designed to potentially cause an early abortion. So because of that, and because there's a zero tolerance policy on killing, if that life has been conceived, I would oppose 100% any drug that is designed to do both. Because if it is designed to kill, then it is an early form abortion, even if the woman isn't sure yet. Because again, women often don't even know they're pregnant until 6-7 weeks. She might not even be sure she's pregnant yet. Thank you. Yes.
Good morning. Can you give me something concrete to say to someone considering having an abortion?
Yes, what was your name?
Grace.
Thank you, Grace. That's actually my middle name. I love that name. So what do we say if we have a friend or we know a woman who's considering abortion? I think the number one thing is to find out how we can support her. Because a lot of the times the reason and why she's considering that abortion. Because I think a lot of the times we find out a woman considering an abortion, it's because she has a lot of other pressures or things going on in her life, and she needs to be given support and courage that she can do this, she is strong, there are people there that are gonna help her. You know, forget whoever is pressuring her. If there's a guy in her life saying you should have an abortion, forget him, you know, like let's get some distance from that situation. And being there for her, I think, is the most powerful thing that we can do. Listen, ask her questions. What I have found time and time again, look, there are a lot of resources out there. There are, first of all, thousands of pregnancy resource centers that provide free confidential support for women. There's hundreds of them in California. There's dozens of them in Southern California. And there are a lot of social services out there. There are a lot of physical resources, material resources out there that we can find ways to connect to women. But a lot of the time, I think it's a mental, emotional obstacle that they're facing where you're feeling alone and you're thinking, does this mean the death of my dreams? Does this mean the death of these plans I have for my life? So being a friend to come alongside and be like, no, this is a new beginning. It's different, and yeah, it's difficult, but there is a path forward that's beautiful. And being there to walk with her and accompany her, I think can make all the difference in the world. And I've seen it. I've seen it save lives.
Hi, Lila. How you doing? I want to start off by saying thank you very much for coming to speak for us. My name is Aiden, and my question is, what do you think the penalty should be for women who seek out abortions? And what do you think the penalty should be for doctors who perform abortions? And if they're different penalties, why?
Thanks, Aiden. Great question. What about criminalization, basically, of abortion? Are you a theology student? Are these all?
Everybody.
You're all theology. Why did this theology class get to ask questions? No, they're good. It's a good one. It's a deep one. All right, criminalization of abortion. I think, yes, abortion should be illegal. It should be culturally rejected, and it should be legally rejected as well, because human life needs to be legally protected at all stages. And I think the number one criminal penalty should go against the abortionists. I mean, abortionists today are making thousands, even millions of dollars off of abortion. And they're doing it literally off of killing people and exploiting the pain of women and some of the worst moments in women's lives. So I'm 100% for the criminalization of doctors or abortionists committing abortions. In the case of women seeking abortions, I think there's a lot of complexity there. It has to do with a lot of mitigating factors, just like these factors would be considered when you have a mother who commits infanticide. There's some really awful cases. Some of you may have heard, like there's a case recently in Texas. A young mother gave birth and she was on trial for the murder of her infant because she killed her baby after the baby was born. Really awful case. But then they had a lot of mitigating factors. Why was she in the mindset to kill? Was she feeling pressure? What else was going on in her life? So I think when we are considering penalties for those that are maybe seeking or procuring an abortion, all those questions have to be considered. Sometimes it could be the guy that is not just an accomplice, but maybe the guy that's pressuring or helping manipulate that situation. So I think a lot of that's going to come up to communities and states having their own laws, and that's the way our country works right now. The federal laws that we have do not have to do with murder or deaths of individuals. It's state laws, and each state will be different and handle that differently.
Thank you. One other question. Do you think if you could write the law however you saw fit, how would you specifically enforce a ban on abortion?
I would criminalize all abortionists and abortion providers, and I would really write a complex statute to deal with the different conditions that a woman may be experiencing who might be seeking abortions. And then we'd have to look carefully at the enforcement mechanisms, because we can't have those be too cumbersome. They have to be done in a way that's appropriate. Like, for example, right now with child abuse, there's a lot of enforcement against child abuse where is it too cumbersome? Are you just investigating every house for child abuse versus is it something that is too not looking at it enough if there's a question that child abuse may have happened? So that would be a whole speech, quite honestly, we'd have to have on that because it's very complex, but I think we have to take the same complexity to it that we take to other things like child abuse or our other murder statutes that are already in existence in California and other states.
Thank you very much, Lila.
Thank you. Good question. More information on this stuff, too, is on Live Action's website. That's an excellent question, and that goes into the really meat of how do we solve the problem legally. I think we have time for, yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie. You started out in this movement when you were young, but you are very unique. This seems like such a big issue. How can what I do as a high school student really make a difference?
Thank you. And Katie is your name? Thanks, Katie. So listen, every single person in this room, you included, Katie, can make a huge difference. God created each of us with our own desires, our own skill sets, our own callings, and it's really a journey to discover how to live those out. So some of us might be good at writing or researching or social media, or we want to just care for people, maybe volunteering in a pregnancy center, or we're just really good at having friendships and being good with our friends and supporting friends in need. I think a big part of the pro-life movement is also educating about sex, because a lot of the reason we have abortion is because people are having sex and they're like, oops, I got pregnant, now I might need to get an abortion. It's like, wait a minute, if sex goes right, actually your sex is designed to get you pregnant. Like, that's how it's designed. That's not necessarily a bad thing, actually. It can be a very beautiful, good thing.
And our society has had this new mindset that somehow sex is not about kids, it's not about any life, and it should be totally separate. Well, that's just not the way our bodies are made, as we know, because men are fertile all the time. Women are fertile a few days a month, but the bottom line is you can get pregnant from sex, and that's not bad. Our society sees it as this like negative thing now. So I think education about sex, education about fertility is a part of that. So I would just encourage you that take time to learn more. There's ways to get involved on the Live Action website. We have our ambassador program. And don't ever think that you can't make a difference, because each one of us have a role to play. It's gonna look very different for all of us, but keep discovering what you enjoy, what you're interested in, and do some research on ways to get involved, and we would love to have you join. The Live Action Ambassador Program is really cool, by the way, and any of you guys could apply. That's online, and you can learn more information about it on our website.
Lila,
Thank you, Pat.
we are so grateful for you being here today. Thank you for sharing with us this very important message. Thank you. Thank you. Lila will be at the back to talk to some of you who have further questions or want to say hi. And thank you. I want to thank the JSerra students. This is not an easy topic. It's very difficult. And thank you for showing such respect to Lila during her talk. Why don't we end with a prayer before we're dismissed? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you to our guests. Students, you're going to all school lunch now, so we're going to dismiss by class. Seniors and juniors, you can get up and go. Sophomores and freshmen, hold on a second.